Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today is April 23rd, 2013. And this is the KNKL Show, episode 80. Wow, we're getting very close to that 100 milestone. Number 100 is closing in on us. My name is Keenan Lafferty, and today we are going to be doing a tutorial on grasping the lightsaber, or stylus in this case. We are going to be learning to use the force of the artist. But before we get into that, I needed to take you on a magical adventure to say thank you to everyone who participated in the awesome charity auction where we auctioned off the Holy Grail that is print number 1 of the Emma cover. And I wanted to say thank you very much to everyone who has been ordering their very own. There's a few left for those of you who have not ordered yours yet. Bear in mind, this is like a once in a long time type of thing. At least doing these types of posters, the first editions with the golden seals on it and the numbered stickers. Might be doing posters in the future, but they will not be to the same type of like limited quality, you know what I mean? So I've got a few more left, and once they're gone forever. So if you guys have not jumped on that yet, please consider buying one. I say it for your sake. Invest in your future, because these are going to be worth a lot of money one day. Alright, and speaking of that, we got a couple things sent into the lovely lane. We got this beautiful witch. Lovely, sent in by Ethan. Love the style of that. Very, very beautiful. And then we got bragging rights coming in from Victor, showing his framed Emma poster on his wall at his house. So thank you guys very much for submitting your pictures to the KNKL Facebook, and continue to do so. Alright guys, with all that out of the way, we're going to go ahead and move into the tutorial. Learning to use the Force. Use the Force. Alright, so what is the force of the artist, you may be asking? Why have I never heard, why was this not taught to me in my college art class? Well, I'll tell you why. It's because it is a little known secret, and it is actually, quite possibly, one of the most amazing art techniques you will ever learn. Alright, so the force of the artist is basically trusting in yourself. Trusting in yourself that you have the skills necessary to create whatever it is you're trying to create, right? And I talk about this all the time, about how the less you try in a creative endeavor, the better it's going to turn out. Whenever you're engaged in something creative, you're designing a character, you're creating an action pose that this character is supposed to be doing in a comic panel that you're laying out, right? This is one that I run into all the time. The more mental effort you put into that layout or into that creative process, it is always going to defeat itself, right? Mental effort always defeats itself in the end. So, much like the Jedis use the Force in Star Wars, we are going to trust in ourselves, almost close our eyes in a way. We're closing our eyes of mental effort, and we are going to rely on using the force of the artist. So, let me go ahead and just kind of explain a couple techniques that really help me out when I'm using this type of technique, such as laying out actions. Like, for example, check this out. I think the biggest thing that you want to do is, there's a couple things that I actually want to talk about today. There's going to be kind of like there's a mental game that goes into this, and I'm curious as to how it's going to work with me actually, like, you know, because usually I'm supposed to be really relaxed while I'm doing this, but I'm going to try my best to get into that state, and you guys can watch me, okay? So there might be some points where I'm going to actually stop speaking for a moment, and you can watch what I do. But this is kind of a quick example, and this might be an example of what would happen if you think too much on a given subject. But maybe not. I don't know. Let's see. I actually haven't tried using the Force on a show yet, so let's see. In some ways, I guess I have. But like, let's say this guy's going to be swinging an axe. Hey, when would we ever need that action? Alright, so let's say this guy is swinging an axe. Now I want you to pay attention to a couple things here. Notice how I'm sketching things out and I'm using shapes to determine the flow, the posture, and basically just doing this very, very quickly. I've laid this down in about 20 seconds. Now, one thing just off the bat before we continue with this is something that I want you to avoid doing from now on. If you want to start doing any sort of sequential art, actually, I don't care what kind of art it is. You will always benefit from doing this type of creative procedure, right? Here's what you don't want to do. You're going to say, okay, I want to draw a guy swinging an axe. Okay, well, let's get in here and let's start drawing his face. let's start drawing his face, right? So, okay, all right, well, let's get all the anatomy in there, right? Start drawing the ears and, you know, like draw all your little things in there, all your measurements, so the eyes go there. And you have our handsome man, right? Now let's give him some hair. How about that, right? Give him some hair. Lovely, okay? And this is all anatomically and precisely correct. And we are going for photorealism here, as you can tell. But here's what you don't want to do. You just start drawing the character really slowly. And it's like, okay, well, he's supposed to be swinging an axe, so I guess, okay, I'll start drawing like the neck down like this. And you start kind of like building off of a head, right? And this is something that is going to stiffen up. If you do this technique, it is going to ultimately end in your whatever action or whatever you're trying to draw. It's going to be very, very stiff. It's going to be very, very stiff. Like, let's say, okay, or it's like, hey, well, how is he swinging this axe? Okay, maybe he's like this. Maybe he's going like this. Oh, and let's lay out all of the musculature so it's anatomically correct. And see, like, laying out all of these muscles and everything, you don't even know if this is the final arm that you're going to be using, right? So this is a complete waste of time. And you're going to be really, really ticked off at yourself if you end up not using this arm, right? If you end up not using this arm for whatever reason, which you probably won't, because look at already how stiff it is. Look at how stiff this guy is swinging his axe. All right? Boring! And then, yeah, just to add insult to injury, let's go ahead and make his torso nice and straight, like that. So this is what you call building off of the head and taking way too much time to like make sure everything's all anatomically correct, make sure it all looks right. I want you to stop doing this. Stop doing this for the rest of your life, okay? And it will serve you very well, because this is, again, think about what I said earlier. You're using a lot of mental energy, and you're putting a lot of mental effort into something that is supposed to be creative. And the less you can try, the less you put forth that mental effort, the better it's going to happen. You open your mind and you let the universe, the gods of Idea Land, shoot the ideas into your earlobes, and then you are rewarded with an amazing idea. You let yourself flow. I talk all the time about flow too, right? So let's go ahead and continue with this. Flow, using the force, all that stuff. So already we can see the huge amount of like energy that's happening here, right? There's a giant like wave of energy. This guy's propelling himself forward, right? And the twist that's happening in his back, right? So let's say like he's going like this, right? And maybe, you know, his neck is going to come up like this, and then, you know, maybe I don't want his head to be right there. I want him to kind of be looking more or less at what he's going to be swinging at, right? So he's actually going to have to be turned, have his head turned this way. And we'll have his hair flying back, right? Because it's all awesome and sweet. And it shows the atmosphere and it shows the movement. And it makes us happy, okay? It makes us happy. But again, I'm relying heavily on shapes to start describing. You know, it's like this is an arm. That shape is an arm to me. I start a lot of my drawings like that. And I really want to like really, really heighten the fact and really bring it to the forefront. When I'm composing my panels for comics, they always start like this. And then oftentimes, whenever I go in there and I refine everything, I always refer back to this original piece, because there's always something that is in this original piece that gets lost when I go in and refine everything. So let's go ahead and do this. Let's think about where this motion is going, right? So it's going whoosh, like that. He's doing like some awesome, you know, like jumpy thingy. And this leg, let's see, his butt is going to be right here, so his leg is naturally going to be like that. Let's have his shoe coming down like that. Lovely! Lovely! And you can see kind of how, like, that little flick, did you see what I just did there? Like, let's go back and see that in slow motion. So I took that, and then I went down like this. Oh, I didn't realize I could do this. But I'm throwing in that little flick right there. These are the kinds of things that come to you when you allow your mind to flow freely, right? You come up with little shapes like this. This is a very comic booky thing to do. You almost exaggerate that calf, and you're like, ooh, I like that. You kind of refine that. Kind of, all right, let's work with that. Here's the knee. It kind of like bends back like that too. And these are all things that are going to work to your advantage. Whereas if you were like, okay, I'm going to draw this guy's, butt and legs, and I got to think about all of like the musculature in here and make sure it all looks anatomically correct. If you start from that point, you're never going to get this type of flow and just like natural expression from it. You will not be using the force of the artist. You will not be using the force. If you're Luke Skywalker and the little ball thing is flying around shooting lasers at you, you're going to be getting hit. You're going to be getting hit in the friggin' gut, in the face, and yeah, that's just not very, that's a little embarrassing, so don't do that. You want to trust in yourself, right? You almost close your eyes. You could have a blindfold on and you could do this. Actually, if you do that, that would be pretty awesome. But you know what I mean. Close the eyes of mental effort. I think that will be the analogy for today. Close the eyes of mental effort during the creative process. Once you've got this all laid out, then you can start going in and be like, okay, so how exactly would this arm work? If this arm was to be holding this axe, how would that work? And sometimes I kind of like stretch my arm out and pretend I was holding something, and then I just kind of look here and be like, oh, okay. Especially like the relation of my bicep. Like I notice, okay, my bicep is pointing straight up, right? If it's like this. So naturally, and then the tricep is down here. And you think about like the shape that kind of comes through here. Also this bone, you can notice. I actually make myself a little bit bigger. So if I'm going like this, and even though this is in a completely different angle, this gives me a good baseline to kind of just figure out where the muscles are going to be going, right? So the bicep here is sticking straight up. Notice how like the tricep kind of like flows right into this bone right here, your humerus, I believe this is. And I always like that little flow that happens right through there. And then the forearm comes right from underneath it. So those are the kinds of things that I think about. And just pay attention to the relation of the muscles, and that gives you a good baseline. So naturally, we'll take that and we'll go here. And now that we know the relation of the muscles, we can say, okay, so bicep is up here, right, pointing straight up. The tricep is down here, and the forearm is going to come right out like that. And again, even at this point, notice how I'm really not refining stuff too much. I'm just getting like those little subtleties in there that show the viewer that I kind of know what the musculature is. And depending on how buff or ripped this guy is, then we can go in there and really start kind of chiseling things out, But I'm personally not the best at doing like super, like jacked dudes, like showing all the muscles in the back and all that stuff. But I do have muscle charts that I can look at while I'm doing things like that. But yeah, usually my guys are, I don't know, rarely do I have them shirtless. Like if they're muscly, they usually have like clothes on. But it's always a good thing to do, and it's something that I'm always looking to improve. Drawing muscly dudes. Muscly jacked men. Alright, so let's go ahead. And then naturally, as you kind of go forward with it, you'll notice that there's some things, that you may run into some problems. You say, okay, well, this hand needs to go, it can't go right here because that would make his arm way too short. So his hand is naturally going to have to come out a little bit further, right? It's going to have to come out like this. And then, once you do that, you use the power of Photoshop. The power of Photoshop, like Luke Skywalker moving the X-Wing from the swamp, you take it and you go like that. And then Yoda is very pleased with you, and then you go on to fight the rest of the Sith army. And then you win the day, and everybody lives happily ever after. In this case, the guy gets the axe. The guy gets the proper axe action that you're trying to get. So yes. And also, do you notice like how much fun I'm having when I'm doing this? I thought that doing, like showing the force, I'd have to like relax, but I'm actually very relaxed while I'm doing the show, which is also another big thing. I think whenever you're engaged in something creative, brainstorming with friends, you ever notice how sometimes your best work comes out when you're just kind of joking around or you're not trying? Another great example of this is, say you have like some sort of problem you're trying to figure out, something that, this happens to me all the time. Whenever I'm trying to figure out how to connect to story points in the comic. The harder I think about it at the time, I'll never come up with a good answer. But the answer will always come to me whenever I'm just like outside. I might be like shopping, grocery shopping, I might be out walking the dog, just somewhere where my mind is not thinking about the comic. And then the idea just comes to me. It just like shoots right into my head. And this goes right back to allowing the infinite intelligence and the force of the artist to work for itself, right? You can't force the force. you must trust in it. You must trust the force. All right. So let's continue here. Oh, I'm actually kind of liking that. Just those lines there. I don't know if those are anatomically correct, but they look pretty good to me. So I'm going to go ahead and keep those for now. Keep those for now. It looks good. Muscly dude. Let's go ahead and give this guy some pants. That way, not just like bare butt naked. Not a huge fan of drawing guys like that. Unless the situation calls for it, which it rarely does. But you never know. You never know. Alright, so let's go ahead and give this guy some Levi's. Yeah, this will be like one of those commercials where it's like the big buff dude like doing some work outside and all he's wearing is jeans, right? And he's all ripped and sexy and sweaty and yeah, all that good stuff. So let's give him some Levi's, yeah. Yeah. It's basically like me every day. You know, if I was a wood chopper, this is how I would chop wood. If I was a lumberjack, this is how I would chop down trees. Alright, and again, not worrying too much about anatomy, really, even now. It's like, that's probably not exactly how that guy's butt would look, but I don't know. And just like, notice like these little things, like how this kind of like points in. I don't know if the body would actually do that, but I like the way it looks. So I'm just kind of keeping it, you know, because it just feels right. It feels really good. It feels, I don't know, it's hard to explain. It just feels good. And again, it could be possibly anatomically correct. Maybe you saw it at one time. Maybe you actually saw that happening with someone's body when they like twisted that way, and your subconscious is just pulling that up and just making it look right. You know what I mean? Or you've studied enough life drawing that you know that yes, the body can in fact do that. Might be a little bit of a comic book exaggeration, like the guy's spine might break if he were to do that in real life. But it looks cool, oftentimes you can get away with it. Alright, so let's go ahead and put in the other hand here. And again, notice how, this is another big thing. I really believe that the force of the artist really comes into play when you're drawing hands. Because hands, eyes, and faces, and all that stuff, I think are some of the most telling signs of what the character is feeling. Right? What the character's expression is, and they're like, whenever I'm looking at a picture of a character, the first places my eyes go are to the face, anywhere that there's skin, and the hands, right? Naturally. And I think a lot of people are the same way. There's a lot of emotion in your hands. There's a difference between, you know, this and this. You know, just that little tiny change with my hands or my fingers can tell what type of emotion I'm feeling. So a big way that I use the force of the artist to draw hands, let me darken this guy in a little bit so you have a little bit more contrast on this. But with hands, this is how I draw hands. I do one of these things. I almost think about like a, I don't know what that would be. It's like a cone type thing. You want to think about like the hand, like the fingers, if they were to come off of this, they would branch out from there, right? So it's like that type of thing. And then I always notice that in almost all cases with any type of gesture that you make with your hand, there's a flow that's happening. Like if you look at each of the ends of my fingers here, there's if you were to connect the dots, it would create like a perfect little arc right through there, right? Or say if you do something even like this, if you like exaggerate your hands, notice how there's still a curve that's going around all of the fingers. And you kind of use this to your advantage, like even stuff like this. Notice the curve that's happening. There's always just like really beautiful gestures, very graceful. No matter how you position your hand, there's always going to be a cool type of flow happening there. I think that's another reason why I pay so much attention to hands, right? Because even in fists, like look at how the knuckles like go up like this, and the creases between the hands all point this way, right? You notice that? You know, like this is a fist, right? This is how somebody would normally draw a fist. But when you do this with the fist, notice how much more intensity there is with that. So if you draw your character about to punch somebody with this type of fist, you know there's some power behind that. With this, it's kind of like, you know, it just looks kind of boring. But note the difference between, the slight difference between this and this. These two things. These are the things you like to study and use the force of the artist. Okay, so naturally, going back to hands, using the force of the artist. Let's say I wanted to just draw one of those hands. Let's draw a few hands, and I'll show you how the flow just kind of comes to me. Right? So I'll draw something like this. Usually I think of like the thumb, and then I'll usually kind of like create an arc. Like I'll be like, okay, the fingers are going to exist along this plane, right? And I don't know if I actually draw that, but I might, I just kind of like see it, right? I see it in my mind. So I'll do something like this, right? So I'll just kind of like flow it right up. And I'll just do something like that, you notice? Like, even though this is like a giant finger, like if I was actually to draw that in, it would be like a giant arse finger. But that's okay, right? Because that still gives a good amount of gesture. And that one's off to the side. Let's go ahead and put that one off to the side. And that's the thing, is it doesn't have to look exactly how your final hand is going to look, right? You can go in there and figure all those things out later. But let's see. Another thing that I really like to do is I like to group the two middle fingers almost into like this triangle shape, and then like the pinky, and then have the thumb like that, right? And then I just connect these, right? Okay, there's the knuckles like that. And that's a hand that's kind of reaching towards you. And I really like doing this for comics because it just makes it so easy, and the gesture is very, very natural. And it still conveys all the emotion that you want it to, without having to go in there and be like, okay, I go like look exactly at my hand, draw all this stuff in. Oh, there's these little folds of skin that are happening here, and all these things here, and then I gotta draw this up, you know, and then you kind of like you're looking at your hand too much, so like, you know, you're concentrating too much, and the fingers just kind of start looking weird, and your hand ends up looking like that, as opposed to, okay, I want to draw that same exact thing, except just from my mind. So I know that I got the thumb here. Alright, we'll do that. This finger is kind of like going to be down, and then these other fingers are going to go like that, right? Notice how I grouped these together again. And I just kind of do that and that. And boom! There you go. There's your beginnings of a hand. Let's say it's in perspective. Why not? And that is how you draw a hand with the force of the artist. That is how you begin to do it. And notice how there's still that good amount of gesture, a plausibly good amount of gesture in it. Definitely something to work with, as opposed to and it only took you 5 seconds. So at worst, you draw it, you hate it, and you just get rid of it and do another one. You know, and that's the other thing I really want to tell you guys is these things will take time. Learning to relax and trust in yourself and trust in the force of the artist does take time. Not every single drawing, not every single layout you're going to do. In fact, a lot of the layouts that I do, I don't even end up liking. But the nice thing is that at least I only spent a few minutes at most just laying it in. And probably about, I would say it's like 99% of the time that I draw something, I like it. I really do. And that's because it's just so natural. It's so naturally laid down, and it's just, I'm trusting what is there. Trusting what my gut says to do. Right? And every now and then I get one I'm like, ugh, that just doesn't look right. And then I'll just do it again. I'll try it again. Or if I'm having particular trouble with it, then I'll finally then look up like a reference of a person doing a similar action, just to get like some inspiration. But, and I don't know if the shoe fits, but just kind of hear me out on this one. I always try my best to, you know, say I was having some trouble with figuring out how this guy's swinging an axe. I'm probably not going to be able to find a guy with swinging an axe with this much power because of like how much I've exaggerated it on Google, right? Probably not going to be able to find that. But maybe somebody jumping, right? Maybe somebody with their legs looking like this. Maybe that would help. You know, especially with like, this has always been kind of a sticking point for me. Like having the hips here, right? Say you're drawing the hips of a guy or a girl, and then the leg is going back this way, and then it comes back to like the butt, you know? And like how this works, like how it comes back into the foot, and I've always had trouble with that. So, so again, if you have particular trouble with something like that, I would say definitely just study. There's all kinds of really good, I mean, figure drawing classes is a way to do it. There's all kinds of like human anatomy courses and stuff like that. I mean, the internet is such a powerful tool. You can basically find any pose you really want to, or at least a part of it. You know what I mean? Something to work with pretty easily. anywhere. You can get pretty creative about where you find your poses from too. So don't come crying to me if you can't find it. Alrighty. So cool. We got our nice little Goku hair there. Nice little Dragon Ball Z Goku hair. Yeah. And sometimes, like, when there's, like, dark on dark, I like to go back in here and kind of, like, cut that out, just so I can remember, okay, that's where his hair is, and then I'll remember that, you know, his hand is back here. And notice how simple this hand is, right? This is what's happening a lot of the time when I'm drawing comics. Like, this hand is the thumb, like that, and then the top finger. I always like to kind of accentuate the index finger as kind of, like, sticking off. It's kind of like its own unit apart from the other three fingers, right? So, like, if a guy's like making a fist, or rather if a character's like making some sort of gesture, I oftentimes, most of the time, I will like to kind of like do something strange with the index finger. I'll bring it up a little bit, right? Like if a character's grabbing something, I'll make the index finger slightly up as opposed to this, right? It just looks cooler, right? If you have the index finger doing something. So again, look at how I'm basically drawing the same thing over here. Oh wait. Drawing this is what is happening right here, right? So notice how I've kind of popped that index finger up, and then the rest of the fingers will kind of stay down like that, right? And then it just goes right into the wrist and comes right on down. Lovely! Lovely! And that is, look how simple that hand is, but the nice gesture, the nice flow of the fingers. That makes us oh so happy. Oh wait. This guy is grabbing the axe, but it's not going into his hand. We should fix that. Fix it! And he's got Emma's axe, which is rather curious. The force of the artist is telling me to draw Emma's axe at all times. Alright, I'm going to take a second over here and see what you guys are talking about. See how you guys are doing. How much time we got? Oh, sweet. We're not even halfway through yet. Alrighty. Aaron's saying, didn't know we were doing self-portraits. Yes. No. If this was me, it needs a beanie. This is no longer hair. This is now a hipster beanie. Let's go ahead and fix that. Yeah, there we go. And get those lovely locks flying through there. Yeah. There we go. Now it's self-portrait. I wish my back looked like that. Alrighty. People talking about Spanish stream commercials. That's great. Alrighty, peoples. Now, I noticed that one thing that's kind of bugging me is that this foot is a little bit out. Like, you bend your knee like that, kind of hurts. So let's go ahead and kind of move this a little bit more under the butt. Slightly more under the butt. Not all the way, just a little bit more. Alright. Oh, and another thing, talking about finding poses. If you guys have some sort of a webcam, or you have somebody that is comfortable, you know, like maybe posing for you, sometimes I'd have my brothers pose for me. They got like little scrawny bodies, you know, but it worked well for what I was doing. At least I could see how the body was supposed to be rendered, or how different body parts interacted with each other. But more often than not, like when I was doing splashes for Riot, I had this big mirror. I'm not kidding you. I literally had this big mirror right by, it was like a closet door, but it was like a giant mirror on it. So what I would do is I would actually like pose in front of the mirror, whatever action this character was doing, or like specifically if I was looking at like an arm, like how does an arm look like when it's like this? I always have trouble with this, like the elbow is pointing at you. How do the muscles interact with, you know, this part of the arm? What kind of shape does it make? And again, I'm looking at the shapes. Look at how this like sharp edge is here because of the bone, right? And then the roundness of the, you know, bicep and tricep as the arm goes back, right? I just kind of pay attention to these things, pay attention to the lines that I would use to basically draw this out. And that really, really helps out a lot. But you have to have a good memory. I mean, you can't just do that and be like, okay, I remember those lines, you know, look at that. So that's why I say, you know, if you have a mirror close to you, it's probably good to do it. Photoshop is really nice because oftentimes I'll be drawing a person's hand, and you know, if you're right-handed, you only got your left hand to work with. But what's really cool is, say I was drawing this hand right here. I could easily look at my own hand and then draw this, right? But say it was the other hand. Well, check this out. All you got to do is flip the canvas, and then you can kind of like say, now I want to draw this hand. I can now use this hand and draw that from here. How cool is that? Huh? Bet you didn't know you could do that? Or maybe you did. I don't know. Again, getting creative. Getting creative. Love it. Love it. I wish I would have saved that other drawing. Dang it, why did I delete that other drawing? Because I wanted to do a final comparison. Okay, I'll do another one. I'll use the force of the artist to create another drawing of what we had before. Because we have realistic face here. Yeah. Realistic face. Swinging axe. Yeah. Yeah. That's what I'm talking about. Alright, and there's his legs. Yes. Sexy booty, right? Because he's been working out. He's got a nice glutes going on there. And he's wearing Levi's, right? Because this is a sexy Levi's commercial. Sexy Levi's commercial. Gotta have him. And there we go. So now you can see clearly the difference between drawing from the head. You can draw from the head, but I would really, like, if you're doing an action scene, never, never, never draw from the head. Never! Never! Or I'll find you. I'll find you, and I'll come over there and I'll slap you silly. I'll be like, no. No. Alrighty. So let's go ahead and finish this guy's shoe down here. This other guy's shoe. Alright. And we'll just continue with this. Continue with all this good stuff. But do you guys notice how all of this has come from, again, going back to, you know, I'm relaxed when I'm doing this. I'm relaxed when I'm doing the show. I'm relaxed when I'm chilling, talking to you guys. And that is how you should feel when you are doing art at all times. Anything creative. You should be in the mindset of, I'm going to trust that I have the skills necessary to sit down and witness my body create this piece, right? And if I don't have the skills right now, then I'm just going to do the best that I can, and then I will take note of that for after and be like, oh, you know what? I could do this better. And then even then, I'm going to relax and be like, oh, well, hey, maybe I could check this out. Maybe I could check out this course online. Maybe I could take this class at school. Maybe I could do some more figure drawing. Maybe I could look at some other pictures of people that are doing what I'm trying to do and copy them. You know, you get the answers to your questions oftentimes, even, and this isn't just in art, it's oftentimes in life too. All your problems and questions that you have, if you really want to get the right answer, oftentimes you have to just relax and you have to let your subconscious, the universe, whatever you call it, your spirit, basically bring the idea to you, the solution to you. You can also, I mean, I don't want to say you should just sit around and wait and be like, oh, well, I'm just going to sit around and watch TV, eat Cheetos, and, you know, when the answer comes, it'll come, right? I mean, you definitely have to take action, right? You have to make plans. I think that's another good thing. If you have a certain problem, definitely have some sort of a plan that you can, I'd say get the ball rolling, and then from that point, just kind of, yeah, I think that's what I'm getting at. Because lately, I've been having some problems. I mean, everybody has problems. Everybody has those little things that you worry about throughout life. And I've noticed that when I really sit down and write them down in my journal, right? I'm going to keep bugging you guys about this because this is an amazing tome of power that was purchased at my local Barnes & Noble. And you should get one yourself. But when you write down your problems, anything that you're worrying about, and then you look at it objectively, and then you come up with a solution, right? Maybe use a little bit of mental energy there, right, to come up, because it is tough. Making plans is actually very, very hard work, so that's okay. That's okay to use mental energy there. Get your plan down, and then from that point, relax. Relax knowing that you have the solution, that you've created the plan, and then oftentimes, you'll come up with another idea that can build on top of that plan that you already have made, and it makes it even better, makes it more efficient. If it's a business, it can add more value to the people that are, you know, reading, or basically, yeah, your consumers, right? Your audience. You can bring more value to your audience. And when you do that, that makes the world a better place, and we all live happy lives, and we get closer to world domination of nerds, which is my ultimate dream. and I'm looking to do that. All right, so I'm just going to finish this off. Let's go ahead and draw that foot in there. And yeah, we're doing pretty good. We're doing really good on time. I'm going to check over here, make sure I'm not missing anything. Oh yeah, we are doing a KNKL show, so I'm actually going to take questions. I'm going to continue drawing this, and any questions that you have, please enter them in the chat to your right, and we will go ahead and take those, and then we will end episode 80 of the KNKL show. Very, very good. While I do that, I'm actually going to pull up this up. But what a good week it has been. What a good week. Every day is good now. It's freaking every day is good. Can't believe it. And speaking of that, this week is like pedal to the metal as far as the comic, because it is coming out very, very soon. I'm aiming for this weekend. We'll see. If it's not this weekend, it'll be very, very soon after that. We're talking days, hours, minutes. All right, let's get back to this. Let's draw this guy's foot in, this manly man's foot in. All right, so to continue with the motion that we're setting in, we don't want to draw this guy's foot like this, right? We don't want to draw his foot like that. That's going to be kind of... Actually, no, we could do that. That would make him look grounded, right? This would make him look like he's kind of springing off of something. Like if this was the ground. I actually kind of like that. Whoa. Cool. I like that a lot. Did you notice how I didn't think that? I just did it. I just used the force. That is what it looks like. That's what using the force looks like. Drawing that thing, and it's like, oh, that kind of looks like a foot stepping off of something, and then it gives you a completely new idea. Because originally I was going to have this guy flying through the air, like doing some Power Ranger move. But now I might like that more. But just in case, let's do the other foot. Let's do the original foot I was thinking of. And let's compare them. The other foot I was thinking about doing was going to look like this. And that's cool too, but you know what? I think I like this one. I like the running one. So let's go ahead and get back to that. Aaron Pinel is asking, tips on drawing things that don't exist. I think drawing things that don't exist, drawing, like, if you're talking about armor, creatures, all those kinds of things. I would say the best way to draw something that does not yet exist is to base it on something that does. That's your starting point. Big thing in games, you know, like you're drawing some creature. You know, a lot of the most popular creatures are popular because they have a starting point. Because they have a point of reference. You can look at that and be like, ooh, that looks kind of like a giraffe. Or, oh, that looks kind of like an iguana, right? And it's just kind of like a general starting point. And then you build off of that, right? A good example is, I mean, let's talk about like Gears of War. You know the Locust guys? Those guys are cool. They're very humanoid. They could be based off humans, but then they have scales that kind of make them look like lizards. And then all the concepting that's chucked on top of that, like their armor designs and the guns with the chainsaws on them. I'm sure that those ideas all came to them when they were relaxed, right? They may have been having fun, and someone just threw out, what if these guns had chainsaws on them? And normally that would be like a stupid idea, right? That would be a quote-unquote stupid idea. People would be like, oh, you know, somebody might be in the side, be like, oh, you know, like I shouldn't say that. People would think I'm dumb, you know? But they were probably having fun when they came up with that. And they said, what if these guns had chainsaws on them? And they were like, heck yeah. And then you got the freaking iconic Lancer gun that is Gears of War, right? So I would say when you're creating things, I'm not liking the way this foot's looking. When you're creating things that don't exist, base it off something that does. Then allow your creative energies and creative juices to flow and just do whatever you want. What if this turtle was composed of a landmine, and if you step on it, it explodes out of its back like some sort of Pokemon, right? But it doesn't hurt the turtle. It actually regenerates the shell back, and then it can just explode over and over again. You know, what if you do things like that? When you're drawing armor designs, and this is going back to the design kind of mentalities that I had, I think a big thing when you're designing, okay, I'm just going to do a new layer. A big thing that I do when I'm designing armor is I just start coming up with shapes, right? And I've talked before about what shapes I like to kind of center around, but I'll be like, okay, let's start with that. Let's do like one of these. And you kind of want to start like playing around with differences in sizes, right? Think about large, smalls, and mediums and have a good balance of each, right? Sometimes I like to do symmetrical type things, other times I don't, but things like this, right? And it's like, okay, what if this just like came out here when you have this giant thing? And then that right there can be a design that could go on a chest plate. You turn it upside down, it's like a headdress. It could be a face of something. It could be, you see right here? Like, look, it could be like evil eyes, right? It could be evil eyes, and these are the teeth. But see, you just kind of allow your imagination to run wild when you're designing things. And yeah, I mean, that's basically how I do it. And I don't worry too much. I really don't worry too much. Sometimes if I want the armor to be based on something, like I want it to look like an old medieval thing, I'll look at that and kind of study that and be like, oh, isn't that interesting how, when you're drawing the knee pads, if this is the guy's leg, coming down like this. Isn't that interesting that the knee pad is usually connected to the thigh guard, and then that overlaps the piece that goes here, and then that overlaps the foot part, right? And then these connect here, these connect here. Right, so that's a general thing that I'll look into. I'll be like, okay, so those are the connection points. Now, what am I going to do, right? What am I going to do with that? And then I would just basically start creating those shapes again, right? Creating those crazy shapes as a general kind of thing to start with. What if this knee pad actually went like this and had a giant spike on it, right? And then this overlaps something that goes back like this, and it's like a giant spawn boot with big old spikes on it, right? Like that, and then a tiny little foot, right? Like Spawn. And then chains, of course, that might be how Spawn was created. But that's all crazy stuff. That's all crazy stuff, and crazy stuff is good. The crazier the idea when you're being creative, the better, actually. And this goes for brainstorming as well. Still not liking this foot. Might be trying too hard. There we go. Got it. That was all it needed. All right, there. It just needed to be twisted a little bit. Looked like he had a broken ankle. Alright, I'm going to take a couple more questions, guys, and then we're going to end today's show. Long live rocket feet. Alright. Hellion Anarchist is actually asking a great question about light interact, like complex lighting, such as light passing through the leaves on trees and doing like that subsurface scattering type of effect. And I would say the best way to do this, if there's any possible way that you could do this, is get some sort of camera, because I really like it when you can take your own photos because you can see it exactly the way it is. You don't have to go on Google and find it. I mean, you can use Google to find it yourself, but I really like, and I personally have not done this, but ideally, like it's all in my head. It's like, man, if I have my camera right now, I'd take a picture of this. That way I can remember and I can use it, or I'd use it for something, or I want to remember this. So, or if you have like one of those crazy new tablets, which is basically like a wireless backlit Wacom tablet or Cintiq, you could definitely take one of those out and be like, oh, okay, you can actually draw from real life. That would be freaking sick. But most of us do not have that luxury, so I would say take your own pictures, find them on Google, study them. Lighting, I think, is just something that you have to see. The closer you can get to real life, the better. Another big thing that a lot of my favorite artists do, I haven't done it as much just because I don't have the time or the patience, and I really don't like doing still lifes personally, but a great way to study materials is get a light set up by your desk, right? And just like set different materials down. Like this thing is glass, and look at how like the light kind of passes through it, like that, shape goes through it, and how everything interacts with it. Place it somewhere on your desk. And get some other things like, okay, let's take this journal. Look at how differently the light interacts with that, right? And you'll just kind of like draw what's on your desk. I've seen a lot of really, really awesome artists do this, and that's kind of how they study lighting, they study materials and stuff like that, and I think it's really a really cool exercise that you can do. However, I personally don't like to do it because I have ADD, and probably about 5 minutes into it, I would want to draw some comic book hero or something like that. And I don't really like drawing still lives that much, but that's just my personal opinion. Yeah, if you want to try that, try it out, see if it works for you, and live long and prosper. Alrighty, people. With that, I'm going to end episode 80 of the KNKL show. Thank you guys once again for joining me live on Ustream. For those of you on YouTube, please thumbs up if you like this, thumbs down if you don't. My name is Keenan Lafferty. I'll see you guys tomorrow. We're going to be jumping right back into Emma. Till then, you guys take care.